of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Pride, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. Myself, Daniel here, and Big Blue. How's it going, my man? How you been?
What's going on, everybody? Good. Just enjoying this little rain that we're getting.
Yeah. It's been raining all day. I don't know. I was working all day inside, so I didn't get the chance to see how it was earlier. But since I've been out, I hadn't noticed it. To me, it didn't seem like it was raining hard, but it does sure seem like at one point it was. Did it get bad today, Blue?
I slept half the day, so I don't know. But I know when I went out there's a pretty nice puddle by my car. So
yeah.
Right now, when I went to go, outside, check the mail and stuff real quick, it was still pretty drizzling, and a little bit of rain picked up for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. It's supposed to rain more tomorrow and rain all night.
Yeah, it's a flash flood warning out here in San Antonio. If you're watching in the San Antonio area, it'll be a flash flood up until tomorrow. We are going to be talking about something referencing San Antonio here in a little bit. But first, let's get into the Idaho. It's the stuff that everybody wants to hear, right? What's going on with Bryan Kohberger? Well, there's been a couple of new documents that have been just recently dropped out, and we're going to go over those. But first, Blue, just not too long ago, the defense was granted, the opportunity to look at and have their experts look at the IGG in its entirety, I believe. And there's some stipulations. If they want to contact one of the members that they have not contacted already, they have to specify why they need to contact them and what purpose it would be for the court. What do you think about that move? Does that, scare the prosecution any? Do you think there's something to be worried about there? What do you think?
No, I don't think so. Because as you'll see here in the upcoming minutes, we're going to talk about a case that they used the genealogy and they used trees to build, and it's a solid case. Mm-hmm. Nobody's having an uproar using the DNA on that one.
Yeah, that's true. To me, like, I understand that this wasn't something, to my understanding, this wasn't something that I'm not necessarily sure the prosecution didn't want to hand over as much as they were having their own problems getting it from the FBI. And now that they've had it and they've gathered everything, I assume, I'm not, necessarily certain that that's the case, but I'm assuming that that's what happened. And what do you call it? Hold on, Blue. I got distracted. But well, anyways, I just don't think that even if they get the chance to look at it, right? So now that they have the opportunity to look at it, what can be done with it, right? That's the question that needs to be asked. What can they do by looking at the IGG? In my opinion, I mean, not much. Let's just say they find something they did wrong. Let's just say the FBI looked at a profile that didn't opt into the program that allows law enforcement to look at your DNA. What do you think, Blue, would then happen with the IGG workup?
I would say they can't use that tree, but the IGG still shows who the DNA it is, and then they match it to the DNA they got from Bryan, and I'm pretty sure he gave us a buccal swab by now. and we're back at point one where this is pointless because it's the same person that committed the crime that's on the night sheet. So we'll see.
All right. So to me, the only thing, and from my understanding, and again, I'm not a lawyer. I know a little bit about law, but I'm not a lawyer. From my understanding is if they found something that was done illegal or improper, then that piece of evidence is thrown out. But the thing is, it's not being used. This is the defense is arguing to have it to be entered into evidence. So it's not being used in anything right now. So if they throw it out, what difference does it end up making? Because if they throw that out, that doesn't mean that they throw out the DNA that they found on the sheath. That DNA is still there. They use the IgG to find the DNA on the sheath. They found the DNA on the sheath first, and they created an STR profile. So where do you see the connection there, Blue?
I just think it's just a stall tactic where, they're going to try to create as much doubt as they can. So that by saying, oh, we had to have that part of the DNA thrown out. And, it might convince somebody out there's third wheel to start spinning and be like, well, then all of it should be thrown out, And I know it's not going to happen, but, there's people that think that way out there.
Well, no, it doesn't matter what other people think. It depends on the judge.
The jury. Well, in the jury pool.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, you're hoping that they're getting a jury pool that's not listening to this, right? They're going to pull a jury out of people who aren't this invested into the case. So if you're watching the Drunk Turkey Show or Truth and Transparency or Swamp Bros or AR Hayes, 12 Gauge, any of the guys, right? True Crime Time, we just had him on. If you're watching any of those guys and you're really invested into the case, you're probably not going to be selected for the jury. You know what I mean? So all this isn't something that the jury's going to hear. It's going to come back to the determination of the judge. And he's already said it's a futile point. He's allowing it. I guess he's trying to give them the benefit of the doubt to see what they come up with.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if he denies everything, then they're going to be like, well, we deserve a mistrial because he didn't even hear our arguments or our points. So I think he's trying to get all that out of the way so that way they could just be a one-time deal. Of course, everybody has appeals that they're going to do. There's always appeals. But I think that way it's more like a solid case. You're going to appeal for no reason. It's going to be harder for it to get picked up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's that possibility with it. But yeah, to me, I just think that they're trying to win in the court of public opinion. And right now, at any point, I think the defense is going to have the leg up to a certain extent at this point of this whole process, right? That includes the arrest, the pretrial stuff, the, to the trial, to afterwards, even the crime. So at this point, this is the point where the defense gets to argue certain things and bring up their point to try to get things suppressed or thrown out. Right. And, you're really not seeing the prosecution doing the same, or they might be, but all this prosecution is doing is sealed. So the public doesn't see it. So at this point, right now, it's the defense's favor, I guess. You know what I mean? Earlier on, once he was arrested, the PCA came out, that was in the prosecution's favor. As time has gone on and things like that, and not necessarily do I think that, the opinions of most of the people who are invested in this, their mind has changed throughout time. But I do think that because it's been so long, there's been a lot of people questioning some things that they may not even remember from the beginning. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah. I mean, there's some of the facts that I even over time have lost in my memory bank because I keep feeding it new information, man. So I have to keep reminding myself, you know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right, dude. I mean, there's some things that even I had kind of like forgotten, and I went back and found. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's why I thought this, or whatever the case may have been. It's always good to go back and try to refresh your memory, so to speak.
Yeah, 'cause even though we talk about it quite a bit, there's other cases that we're doing information reviews on, and then
Mhm.
there's other stuff in our lives that we got to do. We're learning new stuff for work, learning new things for life. So a lot of information goes into this thick skull here.
That's true. That is true. You have a point there. So, so going back to the prosecution and stuff, like I think that the only thing that the defense can win at this point in this argument is going to be maybe some people's opinions who are watching this type of stuff, right? And they're hoping that that can get out to as many people as possible. I mean, they said it in the survey. The defense's own witness, the survey expert, he said that when things get out there in the media or whatever, whether they're true or false, those tend to stick with potential jurors. And even if it doesn't come out in trial, that there's a possibility that a juror would just remember that information and not remember if they heard it during the course of the trial, because the trial is going to be long, or
Yeah.
beforehand, right? And they might think that that was something that was true, and it may not have ever been brought up in court, and that could sway their opinion in one way or another. And so I understand the strategy, that they're doing. It's a good one, I would guess. I mean, it seems like it's working with some people. What do you think?
I mean, you're gonna have somebody on both sides of the aisle on any case. On this one, we've already known from the beginning that there's both sides of the aisle,
Mhm.
and they're both pretty strong. Like they have a lot of people on both sides. Yeah, it can sway somebody who might be in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, it would. It's just it's so. For instance, when they throw out the word exculpatory, and how Ann Taylor has said that they have exculpatory stuff, and yet we've not seen anything at all. We've had one guy testify who is efficient and an expert. I'm sorry, in cast and things like that. Ray, that there's exculpatory evidence, but the reasoning that he has that exculpatory evidence is because there's no test drive data from the victim's house and or between Pullman and Moscow. Now, and my question to that was, why would that be necessary if he allegedly either turned his phone off or put it in airplane mode before he left Pullman, and it was never turned on inside of the house? It was never turned on anywhere else. What would you test it to? What is
Yeah,
there to compare?
and the other thing is there's his car wasn't one of the newer cars that has like the tracking systems,
Mhm.
and so you wouldn't have that information available to them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do not speak negatively about other platforms, please. 100%. We don't talk about other creators here or anything like that. I only bring up the creators that I spoke of because they've been on the show. And so I would recommend going back and watching all of those videos with them on the show, and you can develop your opinion based on that. But yeah, let's keep it positive, y'all. So,
Yeah,
so to me, I don't see the point in it. And like I said, I think that maybe perhaps they're hoping that maybe the FBI did something wrong, right? Talk to somebody who didn't opt in for it, right? Or got their information. That way they can come out and in the court of public opinion say that the FBI did something wrong. Because the only thing that would happen at that point is that evidence would have been thrown out. And those that are in the jury, if the jury is chosen correctly, would have never even have heard it. But like I said, in the court of public opinion, I think it would be a small victory for those that I don't want to necessarily think he's innocent, but for those that want him to be free.
Yeah.
What do you think that's the way it would be?
That's what it sounds like a little bit. Because, nowadays, this is how everybody gets a lot of their information and gets influenced by people talking about it. And we don't have all the facts. We're not in the court. We have what we can read off their documents. But sometimes even all the information they have, we only know a snippet of it.
Right.
They should present all that stuff to the jury when the case is going on, so they'll know more facts.
Well, the IGG is not going to be presented to the jury regardless. Regardless if they find something or not. That information is not going to be, spoken about. That information is not, like, none of that. It's not admissible in court. Because at the end of the day, the IGG didn't say that Bryan Kohberger is the murderer. It stated that you might want to look at Bryan Kohberger. Now, there's a way to test if the IGG was done correctly or not. If the IGG, and let's take this scenario out of it. If the IGG, we had a situation where we collected DNA, and we did a genetic tree, and it pointed at a guy named John Jacobs. All right. Now, I go collect DNA from John Jacobs, whether it's, a trash pool or whatever, surreptitiously, secretly. I collect his DNA and I go test it. If it comes back not a match, that's how I know that the IGG was done wrong. If it comes back a match, that means that the IGG was done correctly. Don't you think, Blue?
Yeah, no, and it's getting more rarely used. I mean, I like the way the representative from the lab itself, the one that's here in Texas, was explaining some of the things that they do, and it's very accurate. I mean, it's getting used more and more to find cases. I like the way she said, even though it's horrible acts that these people commit, we're glad to catch them on the first time.
Right.
Because they always leave DNA behind.
Right. And the thing is, too, I think that technology has come a long way. A lot of people have thought of, like, when they look at some of the evidence in this case, like, for instance, the pings being 27-mile radius or whatever the case may be, and not taking into effect that there's other ways of new technology that can pinpoint where a person was. All right. The fact that their phone doesn't register to the network for some reason, and there should be a reason why on the phone. If he turned it off, there should be a record of that. If he put it in airplane mode, there's a sequence of buttons you have to press to do so, and there should be a record of that on the phone as well. Now, if you put it in a dark bag, where it's like one of those Faraday bags where or cage, where it's like aluminum and doesn't allow signal or anything like that, that might show up as it being operational but not in service. So, I know that, when people, they think of some of the cases or some of the technology that's been out there in some of the more famous cases, but they may be something that's older. They don't look at the most recent case, like in the Alex Murdaugh case, where they were able to determine where he was and, whether the phone was facing one way or the other, with the Gladiator technology, which Ann Taylor brought up in this case. She wanted the training records of those in Gladiator or whatever. And the same thing goes for DNA. Touch DNA may be something that is common-ish, right? But the fact that it's a single source DNA, and even if it was a smaller amount, the fact that they were able to say that it was Bryan Kohberger by 1 in 5 octillion or whatever the chances were it's somebody else, that's because technology has improved. It may have been less of a match 5 years ago or 10 years ago, for sure 20 years ago when I was on the force. And so we can't think that things haven't changed, because they have. And law enforcement has gotten better at capturing their suspects. Now, do they get it wrong sometimes? Sure. I'm sure they do. I don't think they got it wrong in this case. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, I mean, they did some investigation, and like I always said, if he was not guilty and he knew it, I would have been singing. If it was me, I would have been singing to the world that I was not guilty. I can prove that I was somewhere else. I was doing this, but he can't, and he's choosing to stay silent. And to me, that's more of a guilty verdict for me than not letting talking out and saying it wasn't him. I don't know. That's my opinion.
Especially when he was adamant early on that he was innocent, he's going to be exonerated, couldn't wait to get back to clear this up. Howard Bloom told us that. Now, that interview, I recommend going and watching it, but taking the information with a grain of salt. It didn't sound like the information was first person. It sounded like he got information from those that were close to either Michael Kohberger or Steve Goncalves, right? It didn't sound like he actually spoke to Michael Kohberger or Steve. And with that being said, the big fish story is possible, or how things could change is possible as the story goes. So he, I recommend going and watching that. Man, what was I going with that, Boo? I went too far with it and I forgot where I was at.
I guess you're probably you're talking about Howard Bloom and how
it was something with Michael Kohberger, and I think it had to do with something about, over time, he said that he started to come to the realization that it's something about his son. I remember where I was at. That according to Howard Bloom and the people that he talked to, that Bryan Kohberger had spoken to his father and alluded something to the effect that, where he told him about the issues that were happening at WSU. And he told him that he was going to, he was very confident that he can get this sorted out when he got back, yada, yada, yada. It sounded like he had that same kind of, intent when it came down to proving that he is innocent, because, he wanted to be exonerated, not gotten, not released on a technicality, but proven to be innocent. So, and then I don't know, all of a sudden it's just like like a 180. Perhaps whatever he thought he could do with his GPS coordinates didn't work, because I think that was rumored. One of the things that he had said, my GPS coordinates will tell you where I was at. So why the sudden change? Why the gun ho, I'm innocent, I'm gonna get exonerated, I have the evidence to prove. Now is, in 1880, the statute of, the statute for grand jury was beyond reasonable doubt, or the IGG. Like, none of this stuff, it's all loophole stuff.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
They teach you that stuff in those courses he took, so you can be aware of what people will use, the tactics. They're using every single one.
True. Well,
his time's gonna run out of stalling. Hoping the next year, and they can get the case on, and then we can find out the truth.
Yeah, true story. And with that being said, there's been a document that's been dropped, basically ordering the setting of the hearing, and it's going to be scheduled for June 27th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which will be roughly, what is that, like noon, Central time. I'm working on a project at work that's going to be taking me a little bit away for a little bit. Like, Mondays are probably not going to be any shows will be happening on Mondays. I'm still going to do the Wednesdays and Fridays and sometimes Sundays, members only. But during the day, it's going to be a little bit harder. I used to be able to go live during the day. That's not going to be feasible for the next few months. And so we'll definitely cover this, but it's going to be, after work that day. Just a FYI on that one, guys.
Yeah, I get it, man. I also started a course in July, so it's gonna be a rough July too, man.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
Cramming,
World keeps moving.
14 weeks of work to 5, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So schedule's here set for June 27th, 10 a.m. Be open to the public. Now, this is going to be before the change of venue. Now, from my understanding, and this was something that the prosecution was arguing earlier on, that a change of venue can't be done until a trial date is set. When do you think that the trial date will be set for?
They're trying to avoid school time, either December or next summer, like for his trial to start.
Well, you make an interesting point by saying December. Because if they do it in December, the likelihood of a lot of people coming from out of town, especially from the southern states that aren't, acclimated to the weather conditions that are out there, the icy roads or things of that nature, drink. If they're not acclimated to that, I think that you might get less of the crowd out there in December than you would in the summer.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I said, I don't know. Like, I know that they do get a change of venue. It could be sooner. It could be October time.
Maybe. I'm not familiar with that aspect of when things happen. That's probably a lawyer question to ask. But Howard Bloom had said that if there's a change of venue, that typically prolongs these type of things.
Yeah. Because they might have to change judges sometimes. It varies.
I wouldn't know. But do you think, Blue, I'm going to ask you, do you think it would be favorable for Bryan Kohberger if they changed venues?
There's a possibility. There's a possibility because if they change venue somewhere farther out, and they might get a jury pool that has never heard of this case. Mm-hmm. Compared to if they do it local, to me, the local atmosphere, they were scared. They were happy when if somebody was captured, and they know who that person was. Yeah, to me, he has more fingers pointed at him if it's a closer trial.
That's possible. Howard mentioned that the church, I think, that's out there that has a lot of followers. Yeah. They necessarily aren't in favor of police, not necessarily in favor of Bryan Kohberger, but not in favor of police. Here recently, they said that they've lied, according to Howard Bloom, again. And to me, I think that those that are closer are probably, could be invested in watching some of these trials or pretrial hearing. And if they're watching these hearings, they might have a question in their head about, did the FBI do something wrong? And are they violating our rights as citizens of America? Because I see that all the time. I see people say that if the FBI looked at the DNA illegally, that they should let Bryan Kohberger walk because they're violating our rights. The thing is, they're not violating Bryan Kohberger's rights. They're violating the person who opted out. That person's rights were violated, and that person would have a legal stance to sue, whoever it is that they turned in their DNA to. That's a civil issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's not Bryan Kohberger's right that got taken away. It's those people's rights to not be into that program. Thank you, Afton, for gifting a Drunk Turkey Show membership. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Texas Ranger says, is the weather treating you guys okay down there? It's not too bad. It was raining a little bit earlier, but I think it's not that bad. Wicked says if they set a trial date, can and will they change the venue? They can do the change of venue, and I believe the change of venue is scheduled for August. So for me, I think that they ended up. I was going to say that they're going to probably aim for a year and do it June, 25. At least set that preliminary. Now, the other thing that they could do is set it much sooner, knowing that the change of venue is probably going to happen. So Howard Bloom is, for Florence, who's asking, Howard Bloom is a journalist, author. He wrote in the New York Times and most recently in the Airmail articles. And he's been covering the Bryan Kohberger case. He has interviewed multiple sources, which sound like those that are close to Bryan Kohberger's family and those that were close to some of the victims' family members. He also spoke and had communication with law enforcement early on before the gag order. He also had made, because he went out there to Moscow early on before a lot of the stuff went crazy with the theories and this, that, and the third, he was able to make relationships and contacts with certain people from the area and from the school that he was able to utilize as sources for his upcoming book. It should be dropping in about a week on the 25th, I believe. It's called When the Night Comes Falling by Howard Bloom, a requiem for the Idaho 4 murders or something like that.
Yeah. No, so like I would put it in this instance, locally here, everybody knows the Savannah Soto case.
Yeah.
If they moved it to Dallas, they wouldn't know who that was. Some might, but not too much.
Some might. Dina comes in with a 199 super sticker. Thank you so much, Dina. We appreciate you. Heather comes in saying, love my turkeys. Thank you. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell, guys. That's what she's telling you. They're telling you. I think you're right. And I think for me, if he's guilty, he'll be guilty in Moscow. He'd be guilty in Boise. It shouldn't matter. The evidence is what should point him to his guilt. You know what I mean? I would prefer to have, a more likely of a chance to have a unbiased jury if I was confident in my case.
Yeah. Because
it wouldn't matter. And in my opinion, I don't think it is. I mean, when you look at everything together, somebody saw him, granted it wasn't the best witness or anything like that, but it doesn't exclude who he is. And that person left a knife sheath behind with Bryan's DNA on it. That person left the scene in a vehicle that matches Bryan's vehicle. And during that time, Bryan's apparently driving around somewhere, but has his phone off or not connected to the network.
Yeah.
That's a lot of coincidences. And when it comes to a circumstantial, case or any case, it is proof beyond reasonable doubt. And so can you come up with a reasonable story that would answer everything that was laid out? Not just the DNA or not just the white car. You got to answer the DNA and the white car and the vague description and his phone being off and his alibi that he was driving around during the time of the murders. You got to answer them all together. And if you can come up with a reasonable story, then yeah, we got to see what else is out there. But I mean, if you can't come up with a reasonable story at this point, we haven't even seen everything. And in the arguments from the defense haven't, in my opinion, really been, I haven't seen any bombshells yet or anything smoking, no smoking, got none. So what do you think, Blue?
Yeah, I think, it's going to take its time to go through, but once we get to the actual case, I think we'll get more information and we'll be able to get a better answer and we'll go from there. But until then, we're going to just be listening to all these small pieces of the case, which I always say is crazy because in other cases, we never even hear any of this stuff till it goes to actual trial. But on this one, we're all invested, so we're listening to every single snippet of it.
Yeah, you're 100%. But I'll be tuning in. Probably watch the replay on it. On June 27th. And if anything else drops, we'll talk about it. Now, if you have any questions about the Bryan Kohberger case or anything, put some stars on there. We'll probably answer them at the end of the show. But transitioning on to San Antonio, as one of our commenters had mentioned, if we were doing all right, we had something pretty crazy happen out here. Former CEO of a local mental treatment facility is charged with continuous child SA. Now, this guy his name is Jacob Cueller, 45 years old. And the offense is listed as May of 2022. He just resigned from Laurel Ridge. Laurel Ridge is the facility that he was working at. And he resigned there about 3 weeks ago. He was just arrested. So I'm assuming he was probably aware that this was something was going on about to happen.
Yeah. He probably found out he'd been investigated and he just pulled himself out. And that's crazy.
So apparently, go ahead.
That's a pretty big mental facility here in San Antonio.
Yeah, that definitely is. I'm familiar with it. When I was law enforcement, we would have to bring some kids to different facilities sometimes that were suffering from mental situations. And I believe that was one of the places. And so it's crazy because this guy also this was also the child was under the age of 14. So you're looking at teen, maybe even preteen. And it's continuous. So I'm not sure if this was, I guess it's possible if somebody was sent there and was, an inpatient for 2 weeks and it was on multiple occasions that could be considered continuous. I'm not familiar if it's, over a certain span of time for it to be considered continuous. So this might be a person that not mainly necessarily part of the a patient, but could be somebody outside of work. What do you think?
It could be because it being continuous means it was going over through a specific time frame and multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It says here, Cueller was being held on a $75,000 bond, which has been posted. So he's out. He's already free. He's a free man right now. He can't have contact with anybody under the age of 17. If you see this guy, now these are public photos that were from Laurel Ridge. This is Cueller. This is the guy that's being alleged to have committed this crime. Oh, the wrong way. Give me a sec. And so these are all the public photos that are on Laurel Ridge's Facebook. I would recommend going and taking them down. He's right here on the top left side there with the mask. Right here. So this is that guy. If you see him, I'd be cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that they only put one picture of him. I want to make sure everybody got a good look of what this guy looks like. You know what I mean? Especially those that are watching in San Antonio.
Now, to me, I know that they do see all kinds of patients there, but for it to be continuous, the child would have to live there. And I do know they have some units like that, but they mostly send them to the state hospital. So they might have been out of there, not from there.
Maybe. So this is a quote. Who's this quote from? This is from Terry Bufford, Director of Business Development and Marketing at Laurel Ridge Center. It says, Mr. Cueller voluntarily resigned and immediately left his position at Laurel Ridge Treatment Center 3 weeks ago. Based upon the information we have, this is not related in any manner to the Laurel Ridge Treatment Center, and we are not aware of any allegations of improper conduct by Mr. Cueller with any patients at Laurel Ridge Treatment Center. So they're saying that there was nothing there. Now, I saw on a Facebook post, and this is a Facebook post, you got to take that for what it is. One gentleman saying that he had been sent there as a juvenile, and that Mr. Cueller was administering him a lot of trazodone to see if he could get him to pass out. Now, I don't think that Mr. Cueller is a doctor, so take that information as you may. He also said that his wife was there as well, and that she was drugged up and she woke up with Mr. Cueller in the room. Nothing had happened, but that he was in there. And so, again, that's a Facebook post, but this was a guy that it was a real Facebook post. It was from a real Facebook person. It wasn't a made up account or any of those things. So take that with whatever grain of salt that you may. It's not something that I'm saying is true. It's something that I read on Facebook.
Yeah. So
are you familiar with Laurel Ridge, Blue?
Yeah, I have actually a few friends that work there. And they work in, there's also like a private military side to it. So they see a lot of patients with PTSD there too.
Mm.
So I have my friends that work in the PTSD kind of wing.
Yeah.
Or it's not PTSD, but they're going through basic here and they had a breakdown, so they send them there to get evaluated sometimes.
It's a crazy situation, man. I mean, especially because these people, are seeking help or needing help. Sometimes it's not voluntary. Sometimes folks that are sent there, like in my experience, whereas juveniles who had thoughts of hurting themselves.
Yeah.
And we would transfer them out there sometimes. And, they're going there for help. And I mean, these folks are in a downtime, a low part in their life. You know what I mean? They're not doing well. And then they go in there and this guy who's supposed to help them does something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Makes you question a lot of things. And again, Laurel Ridge claims that it's not a part of no allegations from them.
Yeah, because he could have been more like in the business part, because he don't seem like a patient care tech. He didn't have scrubs on. He didn't have, it's mostly nurses that they hire and doctors and therapists.
Yeah.
So he seems more like in the business aspect. Maybe he works in like the business office somewhere there. Just the way his attire is, he's always wearing a suit and collar and suit in the pictures. And
he's a CEO.
Shirt. Yeah. So he'd be in the main office. He wouldn't really be around patients.
Yeah, I think it would be weird to see him around patients.
Yeah. I mean, maybe when there's an event, he would have to go take photos like he was doing there. But all the CEOs I've met, they've mostly always been at the main office.
That's not always true, Blue. There's one CEO that you have met that's not always at the office.
Okay. But most of them, I said most.
That CEO is me. I'm not always at the office. All right. So let's continue this. Let's go to the next case. Finish that off. You see this guy, stay away from him. Don't take any, try to take any law or justice in your own hands. Just keep your distance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you didn't put his photo up. You left the other officer's photo up.
Oh, this is the next case.
Yeah.
So I can pull that back up, but yeah. So there's been an arrest made in the Rachel Morin case. Rachel Morin was a female whose life was taken, I think, in August of last year She was on the Monpaw Trail, popular trail out there in Bel Air in the northeastern part of the United States. And apparently, if you guys remember correctly, there was some DNA that was linked to the scene that ended up linking back to a suspect and I think it was in Los Angeles who had allegedly, in California, who had allegedly assaulted a young lady, a 9-year-old, and her mother. Crazy thing, crazy. There's about 5 minutes of this that we're going to watch. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I do want to listen to what the sheriff here is going to say about this situation, and then me and you will have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Thanks, Christy. Good afternoon, everybody. As Christy said, I'm Harford County Sheriff Jeff Gaylor. As everyone's aware, on August 6, 2023, our peaceful Harford County community was rocked when the body of Rachel Morin was discovered in an area just about a mile from here, just off the Monpaw hiking trail here just outside the town of Bel Air. In addition to the impact to our local Harford County community, Rachel's murder gained national and even international attention. The young mother of 5, whose life was violently taken in a public location, is one of the safest places in the state. It's not supposed to happen, and it shouldn't have happened. In the days and months since Rachel was murdered, Rachel's family and friends, our Harford County community, and the men and women of the Harford County Sheriff's Office, along with all of our allied partners, have worked tirelessly to bring the individual responsible for her death to justice. Our deputies and our partners have worked this case with persistence and passion for Rachel and for her family every day over the past 10 months. Just over 3 weeks ago, on May 20th, on what should have been Rachel's 38th birthday, and in a poetic coincidence, or perhaps in Rachel's own divine assistance, our investigators uncovered a lead that led us to this day. And on this day, I'm here to tell you, Rachel's murderer is no longer a free man. Hopefully, he will never have the opportunity to walk free again. The lead we received was related to DNA evidence and allowed investigators to finally put a name to the image of the suspect in the video from Los Angeles, which we released 2 weeks after Rachel's death. After we had the video, we knew what he looked like. We knew what he looked like, but we didn't know who he was. With the new DNA evidence, now we know who he is, but we still didn't know where he was. As I have stated many times, this killer could have been laying his head in any community in the country or even in the world, and indeed, that was completely accurate. Over the past 2 weeks, investigators continued their diligent investigation and tracked our suspect all the way from Prince George's County to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Our investigators also obtained an arrest warrant yesterday afternoon, and as the arrest warrant was being issued, we met with Rachel's family, many of whom are with us today, to update them on the case and asked of them an almost impossible request, and that was to keep the information about the identity and the arrest warrant to themselves and protected to allow investigators the opportunity to try to apprehend this suspect before it was made public in the news, so that our suspect did not have the opportunity to learn that he was wanted and to once again flee. 5 hours after meeting with the family and just before midnight our time, police in Tulsa, Oklahoma, assisted by our federal partners, located and arrested Rachel's murderer, Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez. So far, we have learned that the suspect, now pictured on the screens, is a 23-year-old citizen of El Salvador who illegally crossed the border into the United States in February of 2023. We all suspected that perhaps Rachel was not his first victim, and it's my understanding that this suspect, this monster, fled to the United States illegally after committing the brutal murder of a young woman in El Salvador a month early in January of 2023. Once in our country, and likely emboldened by his anonymity, he brutally attacked a 9-year-old girl and her mother during a home invasion in March of 2023 in Los Angeles. And as everyone I believe is aware, that was our first DNA match linking Rachel's case to the Los Angeles case. It has been a fear of mine that once we identified this suspect, the result would be exactly this. And I want to now direct these comments to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and to every member in both chambers of Congress. We are 1,800 miles away here in Harford County. We are 1,800 miles away from the southern border, and the American citizens are not safe because of failed immigration policies. This is the second time in just 2 years that an innocent Harford County woman has lost her life to a criminal in our country illegally. Let me repeat that. 1,800 miles from the southern border, and this is the second woman in our county to be killed by an illegal alien. Suspects, in both cases, they are suspects from El Salvador with ties to criminal gangs.
Pretty impactful there, Big Blue. Don't you think? I mean, he's right, 1,800 miles away, and he's kind of directing that to the government and everything that's going on at the border.
Yeah.
This is from what I understand, more of a democratic area. And so it's kind of interesting. I mean, not interesting. I think it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
That they're starting to see some of the problems that have been going on our southern border and around here.
Oh man, you should see the reports coming out of New York, Chicago, Baltimore, wherever the sanctuary cities were that they wanted these legal immigrants to get shipped to because they had the space for them. They're having so many problems because a lot of them are ex-gang members, don't know anything else than doing what they were doing back home. Selling drugs, committing crimes.
Oh, what was that? That was really loud in my ear. Did you hear that?
I heard a little bit of it. Yeah.
It was an ad for one of the articles I had open. It scared the living bejesus out of me. Yeah, man. I think going back to what you were saying, it's definitely, there's a lot of things going on in a lot of different places, and I mean, I think that the problem is obvious, and I don't think it should be a political problem. I don't think you have to be on one side or the other to see that this is an issue and that something needs to be done. Right? I mean, I'm not very political. I don't really get into it too much. I really don't care, to be honest with you. As far as like, well, until recently at least, I really didn't care, if one side won or the other, or any of those things. And so, me just saying this, like,
either way, we're still going to pay taxes and we're still going to have to deal with the consequences. So it doesn't matter what side wins. But still, I think when it comes to like deporting and all the illegal immigrants that are coming through, I mean, the government hasn't driven through the streets I have.
Yeah.
There's so many homeless people. Like, just there's a neighborhood I go through when I go to school. There's a lot of older houses and empty lots. There's like 20 people living in tents, and it's not just like one little house area. It's like every other block, especially by downtown area. You ever drive by one of the bus stations downtown that's near the homeless shelter? During the day, they have to leave. They have to go somewhere, so they all go to the bus stop. There's hundreds of people just laying on benches. It's hot. I spoke to this gentleman the other day, and he was like, "Man, he's like, I don't even like carrying my ID because I'm scared I'm gonna get mugged walking to the bus. I've been mugged once." And he's like, and then they get mad if they ask for money, and I don't have money to give them.
Yeah,
it's crazy, Like, we have no room for these guys. How do you expect to have room for everybody else that's trying to get through?
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge veteran, homeless issue first. That should be solved. You know what I mean?
I think there's a lot of veterans, a lot of hardworking families that can't afford rent. I mean, rent has been going down in San Antonio, but still, there's a lot of families that live at Haven for Hope because they can't afford housing.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, the citizens of America should be put first.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Regardless of anything, we have a lot of issues here that should be resolved before anybody else's issues. That's all I'm going to say on it. We got a couple of questions here. Sissy asks, Daniel, can the family sue the government for all the illegals crossing and what happened to her? She was, how can I put this? Because I know if I say the word, we're gonna get hit. She was AR'd. and then her life was taken. I believe by blunt force. There was, if I remember correctly, it was described the blood on several rocks in the area, things like that. And can they sue? I'm not sure. You know, I think that there's enough evidence out there that you would think that they could, but at the same time, I mean, I'm not sure if they can. I wouldn't know. Let's see. What do you think, Blue? Do you think they can sue? Do you know the answer to that question?
I mean, they can probably file a civil suit because he was let in to the United States through a border because that's how they know he came in February. Unless he was one of them that got away, the getaways or whatever, but they wouldn't know when he came in. And that's the thing about the processing. That's why they used to hold people for a while, is to find out if they were wanted in their country for any other crimes, or to see if they were gang affiliated. You know, if they had certain tattoos, if they had certain who they would call. They would track them for a while to see what kind of people they were letting in, and they weren't doing that no more during that time. They were just like, okay, what's your name? What's your ID? Here you go. Have a nice day. And they let a lot of criminals in that time, and the cartel and the criminal organizations knew that, and that's why they sent more people. And that's why, if you really look at the stats, there's a lot of people that do go through the border, and there's still a lot of police chases going down, and because the ones that are in the police chases are the ones that have all the wanted for murder, wanted for being criminal acts, drug dealing. They don't want to get caught through the bridges because if they do have a record, they normally do get deported. But if the record hasn't been built yet, because that person he had murdered was a month before, so it probably wasn't even. Who knows if they had already knew it was him or not? They probably knew it was him, but maybe it just the record. Some of those other countries don't have a digital system set up like we do, and then they don't have it all nationally. They have it like in their providence, so they're probably not even hooked up to the national database.
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, they can get it happens here, right? There are criminals that commit a crime here in the United States and flee. There are countries that don't have extradition, or even if they do, they go and hide in other countries to, avoid capture, obviously. And it's obviously more difficult to capture them, even if they're in another country that does have extraditional rights. If they're able to get out of here into a different country without, it's signing off some red bells sometimes. I mean, depending on the country. And you know what I mean? Obviously, if they're coming from one of their countries back and we're here, we're not going to know the information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Allie Books comes in saying, Allie, Drunk Turkey Show. I'm watching from the beginning. I would love to see the interview between the cops and Bryan. I know that his lawyer mentioned something about, or somebody mentioned something. I can't remember if it was his lawyer or the police there in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I had mentioned something about they talked to him for like 15 minutes. And then once the questions got a little bit too hard, he lawyered up. So if that's true and there's something out there, we'll probably see it in court if it becomes, relevant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if he says something and he's caught lying in it, we'll see it. But if he really is not answering any questions, we probably won't.
Yeah. And then the thing about the Morin case that I was going to bring up,
go ahead.
We kind of changed it a little bit, was they caught him with the DNA testing facility here in Texas. And it was interesting because when the lady said, we get samples from all over the states, and she mentioned that sample was considered like contaminated. And at first I was like, how was it contaminated? Like it was just one person, but they say it's contaminated because it's the victim's DNA mixed in with the predator's DNA. And what they do is they get the DNAs and they rebuild them when they separate them, and then that's how they were able to link them.
And so,
go ahead.
So they were able to separate the DNA samples from the ones in LA, and then pull up his profile and put it in CODIS.
Yeah, I think they said that they were able to. The one Miss Morin sample was like the one that was contaminated, so they were able to separate it, and then I think that's what linked them to the one in LA, and then from there, I think when they do come on the border, they do give fingerprints, and they might give a sample. I don't know, but I know that they did have to go to South America to raid something, and I think get more DNA sample. They built a tree. She said something about they built a tree off that DNA, and it led to him from them building a tree, a family tree. So maybe if some of his family members that are here maybe have done DNA testing or ancestry tests, and I don't know where they got the information from. They said they built the tree, and that's who it led to.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, I know they caught him in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is crazy because he started his first crime that we're aware of in Los Angeles. The next one we're aware of, and I say we're aware of because there's possibility that other ones were committed, was completely cross country, and then he's found right smack in the center. I don't know if he was found like with family members or anything. I mean, it's possible that he was with family members.
And he was caught at some bar. He was arrested at some bar. I was reading up on it.
That's interesting. Send me that. We've got to go through that maybe when we talk more in depth about the DNA and Bryan Kohberger. Holly asks, if BK venue is moved, will the cameras being allowed to stay the same or be up for reconsideration? It's a good question. I think it depends on the judge. If it's the same judge, I think it'll stay the same. If it's a different judge, I don't know. What do you think, Blue? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think I would like them to be there, but it's all up to the court, and I guess depending on how the media goes, because I mean, you saw the Rex Humerman, not Rex Humerman. I think the other one that they did the court case, and it was all televised.
Murdaugh,
Alex Murdaugh. Yeah, and then I have court TV on my TV, and there's dozens of court cases that are televised. So I'm pretty sure this one's going to be televised.
I think it will be televised as well. I think it'll be televised as well. I think if it gets moved in a different judge, we might get the luxury of having, court TV or some of the other news media allowed back in to use their cameras versus just watching the dang small little camera that you can't focus in on anything. You know what I mean? So that might end up happening, but we'll see. Justin Okie, oh man,
there you go.
It says they went. No, that wasn't the one I put up. Daniel, do you know about the red notice and why Interpol was involved in El Salvador case? I don't know about the red notice, nor do I know why Interpol was involved. Did you see any of that, Blue?
Man, I do see that. I didn't know Interpol was involved, but I read a little bit, but I was skimming through both cases before I jumped on today, so I don't know what the red notice is either.
Justin Oki says they went all the way to South America to get family history, and DNA was on news.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Let's see. So One in El Salvador, one in northeast part of the country. The other one wasn't a murder; it was just a sexual assault. So, I know somebody was asking about, maybe he was a serial killer in the making. It's possible. I mean, this may not even have been his only crimes, which would have been crazy. Texas Ranger says, I think this guy was riding freight trains all over. That's possible.
Yeah,
But if he's in a bar, though, he's probably got a little bit of money doing something. He might have a car.
yeah. I think the hard part about it is, sometimes in some of those situations, the U.S. has a little blame in it of why people like that can survive in here. And it's not because we're totally ignore it, but it's because so many people depend on drugs and the drug trade. These guys make a living off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many loophole and backdoor deals that they need people like that to be able to survive. And we're the ones that feed it, which is the sad part.
Yeah. Let's see. It sure is, man. I'm going to go through some of these real quick because we're about to call it a show. Art says, I recently uploaded my ancestry DNA profile to GED Match to allow investigators to use for cold case and Jane Doe and John Doe investigations. If they get 5 million profiles, they can solve most cases. That's true. That is true.
I think eventually with the owner or the HR, the media representative for the DNA place here in Texas was saying that they would love to be able to solve more cases, but they said something about it being so costly that they can't do so many runs. So when they do these runs, they get requests from police, and then the state ends up having to pay. So I think she was saying that there's a bill that they're trying to pass to the Senate to provide funding for them to be able to run, unsolved cases and try to find, the murders or the rapists or whatever they're doing.
Well, this will be the last comment, and I'm going to ask you a question about this, and I got a weird story about it. Mark says, in California, the problem is funding goes to junkies, then illegals, and then whatever is left over goes to people who just need help, but are down on their luck. Did you know, Blue, that San Francisco is giving free alcohol to the homeless in efforts to stop severe alcoholism?
I didn't know they were giving free alcohol, but that's pretty crazy. I do know that they a lot of people moved out there that are homeless because they do pay their homeless people a monthly check. I believe somebody told me it was somewhere around $1,300 a month, and they get like $300 in food stamps. So there's a documentary that's coming out about the people that are destroying the LA River. I mean, the LA River was already dirty as it was, right? But there's these RV encampments that are people are just parking RVs on the side of the LA River. They're homeless because they need a place to stay, but there's no like dump sites for their sewage or anything like that. So they just drive the RV, or they park it next to the LA River. They just open their black tank with hoses and dump all their sewage into the LA River. So they were saying that the contamination in that LA River has gone up like 200% in the last 5 years or something like that, because that's what all the homeless people are doing.
Dang, man, it's taking its toll, man. And for those that were skeptical about the San Francisco stuff, but San Francisco gives alcohol to help treat homeless people struggling with addiction. So it says here, the San Francisco spends $5 million. This is taxpayer money. $5 million on managed alcohol program annually. It's $5 million a year. If they're saying that annually, that probably means that this is something that's been approved for more than 1 year. You know what I mean? Support, it's the program helps to stabilize drinking patterns. And so I'm assuming what they're doing is they're trying to get some of these homeless folks. They're going to give them free beer, but minimize it so that I don't know, try to wean them off.
Wean them off, yeah. Because if you cut it out cold turkey, get it? Drunk turkey.
Yeah, drunk turkey.
You get really sick, and you get some shaking. Sometimes you go into like shock, man. So it's not.
But isn't there like other methods of assisting with those type of
they can slowly start weaning them off, and then they can start prescribing them a medicine that once you start taking it, it kind of makes you really nauseous when you drink, and it pretty much makes you vomit when you start drinking.
Right.
But you gotta. Some of these people can drink a bottle. I'll tell you this story. I remember one time, right? There was a homeless guy came in saying he was sick. I was like, all right. And then he's like, you know what? I don't want to get seen no more. And he was fine. And then he went and sat in the parking lot. And then about 2 hours later, because we were busy, somebody came in. It's like, there's somebody passed out in your parking lot. I was like, what? So I went out there, and it was a homeless guy. He was out there maybe 2 hours. Next to him there was a half bottle of Jim Beam gone, like little half ones, and like 6 or 7 shooters. We ended up having to call an ambulance for him, man. I mean, like in 2 hours, he drank all that straight. Like there was no mixers next to him, no soda bottles or nothing. Just that's it. And people do that. I mean, you see it all the time when you drive downtown here. There's people passed out on benches. Either they're high or they're drunk.
But right now is a pretty dangerous time to be drinking and homeless, man. It's hot outside. Dehydration is a real thing. In fact, I've seen just the other day a couple of homeless persons who had been drinking passed away from heat stroke and dehydration.
You get the DTs.
Yeah. We understand that, we understand that aspect, but I think that there could be a better way of doing this. Like if and I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't know. Maybe this is the only way to prevent, the homeless from dying, or anybody who has a severe alcohol issue. But I don't know, man. Even here, the critics saying tax dollars should not go toward funding alcoholics. I think that's somewhat true.
We fund everything else, though. Why not that? We fund.
But that's the problem. We need to stop funding everything else and start funding the things that matter.
We fund a lot of stuff that some companies should be paying privately themselves to do.
Yeah.
We give so many tax breaks to these big, rich, billion-dollar corporations, and we tax all the little guys like us.
No, I get it.
So, like, that's one thing that I was, reading about the other day is like all the money that we give out to help other countries and help others, we're going broke. And we're going to keep printing the money until our money's worthless. But, that's another story, another topic when we start talking about,
economy. Yeah, we can talk about that then. I want to thank everybody that tuned in today. We appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed what you saw, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribed, especially if you made it up to this point. Even if you don't agree with us, you're watching us all the way to the end. You must find some sort of entertainment out of it. So consider giving us a subscribe and ring that notification bell.
And let me tell you one last thing. So y'all be careful out there drinking, because even though the city of San Francisco was giving free beers to the homeless, and they can be on the park bench asleep, throwing up, I paid for one of those experiences myself a couple weeks ago, and it was not fun sitting on that bench downtown San Antonio, throwing up on the side. It was a bad experience. So I feel bad for those guys. So hopefully they get the help they need. I did. I mean, I still drink, but
yeah, Big Blue's he's like, I'm going on vacation. Where are you going? San Francisco. We know why. We know why. We know why he's going. I want to say thank you, everybody. Y'all have a good night. We'll be back on Friday. I'm not sure yet what we're going to be talking about. We might talk more about the Bryan Kohberger case if something comes out. If not, there's some new updates in the world of ufology, and so we might be going back into some sci-fi stuff. So hit that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, whole 9 yards. We'll see you next time.